We are all taught that there was an Irish potato famine in 1845. There was no famine. What actually happened, the Irish people were producing tons of food, but they didn't own their own land. They were strictly tenant farmers, mostly tenant farmers in their own country. And the British, the English, owned almost all the land, and they just exported all this food. The Irish, who were able to afford to eat potatoes because they were so cheap. The potato crop failed, and about 1 million Irish people, Irish Catholics, starved to death. This was not a famine, this was a genocide. They were producing tons of food and it was just being exported. Because of this genocide, about 1 million Irish people emigrated to the United States at this time, where they were pretty much not welcomed here either. And in Ireland, they were being exploited by the English Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And in the United States, they were being exploited by the American Anglo-Saxon Protestants, who were discriminating against the Irish. For many of them, that the only job that they could find was in the army. And in the army, quite often, the Irish Catholic soldiers would be abused by their American officers who didn't like Catholics. But in 1846, the United States attacked Mexico. This is what Mexico looked like before the Mexican War, and on the top and on the bottom is what it looked like after the war. And the Irish American soldiers started to see that often American soldiers were abusing the Catholic Mexicans in the areas that they were conquering. The Irish soldiers, a lot of them had had enough, and they left the American army, went to Mexico, became Mexican citizens, and fought for the Mexican army against the United States. They formed their own brigade called the St. Patrick's Brigade, and they fought under the green flag of Ireland for Mexico. Erin go bragh means Ireland forever. The harp is the symbol of Ireland. But the United States won the war and captured all of the remaining, they occupied Mexico and captured the surviving members of the St. Patrick's Brigade. Rather than treating them as prisoners of war, they were citizens of Mexico, they treated them as American citizens, and they sentenced them to death for treason against their country, the United States of America. And they held the largest mass hanging in the history of the country up until that time, when they hung 30 soldiers of the St. Patrick's Brigade. This ignominious record was shattered about 15 years later, when that great humanitarian Abraham Lincoln hung 38 Sioux warriors. He was hanging them for committing treason against their country, the United States of America, rather than considering them as prisoners of war who were really defending their country, the Sioux Nation. But I digress. Getting back to the St. Patrick's Brigade, they actually are honored every year in Mexico City and Dublin in Ireland, but they are completely erased from American history. However, there is a movie you can see called One Man's Hero, 1999 movie starring Tom Berenger, all about the St. Patrick's Brigade. MGM made the movie, but when they saw how bad it made the United States look, they refused to release it to movie theaters. But you can see it today on Netflix. Let's go back across the pond to Ireland, and the next game the English were playing with the Irish was called Home Rule. The British Liberal Party was trying to do some minor reforms, kind of like the Democratic Party here in the United States today. And their Prime Minister, William Gladstone, introduced Home Rule, was trying to introduce it, where the Irish would have limited self-government. They could take out the trash, they could fix the roads, but their main job would be to suppress the Irish radicals. I now bring James Connolly into the story. Connolly wasn't buying any of this home rule business. He said, England would still rule you. She would rule you through her capitalists, through her landlords, through her financiers, through her usurers, through the whole array of commercialized and individualistic institutions she has planted in this country and watered with the tears of our mothers and the blood of our martyrs. Nevertheless, Home Rule never passed the British Parliament anyway. And in 1914, World War I broke out, and the world changed forever, including Ireland. In the next speech, the Irish Easter Rebellion of 1916.